Hey, so I'm doing another book review today. I'm going to be talking about The Ask Formula, which is a book by Ryan Levesque, and this is actually one of my favorite books I've been reading this month, this year. It's a book for marketers, so I got a lot out of it, but it's very useful because it's something any business can do. And basically, Ryan spends the first third of the book kind of going through his stories, like the hero's journey, his path taking university and then realizing it's something he wanted to do. Taking a job in China, and kind of his whole journey through corporate world until he realized he wouldn't be happy until he had his own business, and he took that risk. So the first third of the book is kind of interesting, but not a ton of value, and then he really gets into the meat of it. So I was actually reading this book again, speed reading it on the iPhone, and it's the first book I've been reading for a while that I haven't put it down. I finished it from start to cover to cover in one sitting, and I haven't done that with a book in ages. So it's a really good read, really engaging. Obviously, he's a marketer. The guy knows how to write, and he has a lot of related courses and products that go along with what he's talking about. So there is some pitching in the book, but it's not a lot, and I think there's a ton of value. So it's definitely worth reading for any kind of marketer selling something online or doing any kind of online marketing. There's a lot of gold in there. So I'm just going to go through some of his kind of concepts. Basically, he tried to make money in a lot of different ways, struggled for a long time to really find out how to sell to people, what they wanted. And basically, he kind of realized that people are all different, and it's very hard to just push one product onto everyone. You're not going to find one product that really works for everyone. And if you're building up some kind of email list or something to sell, trying to work on a product to sell to these people on your list, you're going to find that they all have different needs. And so he basically, the way he finds out what people want is to work, to survey them to find out what are their biggest challenges. You can survey people on your list. You can survey, through a landing page, through cold traffic, and you basically identify people who have some pain, and you get them to fill out a survey in exchange for some value. But basically, you're really probing them for information to find out what they like, what they're struggling with, where they fit into your target market, and you'll within any niche you'll have a sub niche. Within a sub niche you'll have different buckets of people which have different pains and different needs. So by surveying them all, if you do this intelligently, you can tag each email subscriber with different properties, and you can put them into different buckets. So this will allow you to kind of send very, very targeted messages, very targeted emails, very targeted offers, and the way he does it is just quite clever. So you can't explain everything in the book. Obviously, there's some products and some courses he has, but if you look him up, you'll find more about him. Just want to cover some of the really smart stuff that I was reading that I'm going to apply in my business. So the thing he does is an example. He'll ask people, what's your biggest marketing bottleneck, and then his user base or his customer base, prospect base is businesses who are trying to grow, and so he's basically saying, there's a quick survey that'll help you identify what your possible bottleneck could be. There's usually only a few possibilities, and this survey will help you narrow it down and identify it. And so that's really the incentive for people to complete the survey, because they'll go through it and they'll get some answers they're looking for, which is going to help them with some challenge they have. And so that's kind of the first kind of funnel. And he's got a whole series, deep dive funnel, micro commitment funnels. There's a whole kind of system and flow to how you put it together. And again, that's a bit too much to cover in this book review, but I thought it was very smart the way he pieced that together. Obviously, he's developed this system over time. And it's difficult because a lot of survey software out there doesn't have that flexibility to really customize it for hyper targeting traffic to different parts of your funnel. So you need very, very smart survey software that does this. And most survey software like Wufoo and these software forms online, they don't really have the conditional logic that you need. So I'm really going to test out his product, the survey funnel software, and I'll probably do another video after that just to go through it and see how to actually apply some of these concepts. But basically, that's the first thing, right? You start out identifying a problem, saying this survey is going to help you identify kind of where your biggest bottleneck is, how to fix that so you can grow in your business, and that's the solution they're going to get from doing the survey. So, by limiting the number of possibilities, it helps them to kind of relieve that anxiety and stress. Maybe there's a lot of things going on in their business, they're not sure what is holding them back, what's the problem, and so this survey is kind of helping them to identify that and alleviate that stress and anxiety from having too many possibilities. And he has kind of all kinds of marketing tactics. He talks a lot about how you build the copy and the landing page, which I guess for me is a little bit basic, but a lot of people will find that very useful. using copy like if you have experienced this, if you have done this, and building all these inclusive statements into your copy to kind of build that rapport with your prospect. So, if you're driving traffic to a landing page, you want to have somewhere in there or in your email, if you've experienced this, if you're over 40, you're struggling with your weight, if you're over 50 or whatever, you basically build these statements out that ring true for your prospects. And you can kind of get these from your surveys. So basically it's like a feedback loop. He'll get the information from the survey, and then he'll build a video, or he'll build an email, or he'll do a webinar, and it's all very, very targeted for the problems that he's getting back from his audience. And because he's been able to segment his audience from making them fill out the survey, then he can send them an offer for that exact problem they have, do a webinar for a common set of problems for one of those buckets in his audience. So it's just really clever the way he kind of builds that feedback loop. And he might actually, customize a certain part of product he's doing for a specific bucket, and then send just that bucket the offer. Because it's super targeted, hyper-targeted, the conversion rate is much higher than if you just send a generic product or service to the whole of your list, the whole of your audience. It's not going to convert the same. And he does the usual things like following up with email sequences, multiple touch points, before the sale, after the sale, to make sure they get the most out of it, and then obviously upselling people. So that whole typical kind of sales funnel is what he's doing. But the way he's integrating the survey funnel part of it to get information back from his audience and feed that back to them, that's what's pretty powerful, and that's what really drives conversion up. I think if you're using paid traffic, it's very hard without these kind of tactics to become very profitable. You need a really, really complex funnel. You need a lot of upsells, downsells, but still you're missing something if you're not doing this. If you're not getting feedback from your audience and not tweaking your funnel for them, you'll be wasting, like people say, a good conversion rate on landing page is 10%, which means 90% of your customers or your visitors are not buying something. So you've got to get them to do something. And what he does for those people is have this micro-commitment survey, these small surveys people can fill in, and they're just giving their email and they're giving some information. But using that information, he can then start to put these people into buckets and work out what their exact problems and challenges are. And you can't automate all of this. You need some human oversight to look at the responses, kind of put these people into buckets and tag them. But that 90% that doesn't necessarily buy your main offer, you find some way to add value to them, and you can just get them on your list through these surveys, and that just it massively increases the conversion on the whole amount of traffic. So if you're paying for every click, you want to convert as many of those clicks as you can and get them into your funnel. So he does that with survey funnels, and it's just really clever. I haven't read anyone else doing it quite like this, and I've gone through a lot of people's survey sales funnels online, but no one is really doing it like this, I think, and the book is quite new, so maybe in a year, once more people know about this, it'll be maybe saturated in some markets, but for now it's very new, it's very fresh, and actually he says, a lot of people warned him not to release this, not to publish this, but he had a very close shave, almost dying a couple of years ago, and that kind of made him think about his impact and legacy, what he wanted to leave for the world, and he decided to release this information. So I think it's only helped him because it's given him a lot more, credibility and authority, and he's selling related products and services. So it's win-win. But it's really a lot of information that I haven't seen anywhere else. And then I've done a lot of studying and reading about marketing and reading marketers. So yeah, so it's good stuff. Let me see what else I got here. Yeah, some basic copy tips. Like what kind of thing he'll say to his visitor on the landing page. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. That's why we developed this tool, and that's basically a micro-commitment survey. So you give them this survey, which helps them identify what sort of challenge they're having and what the solution might be. So he'll give them some content at the end of that survey that says, based on information you told us, this is why, this is the problem we think you're having, this is why it happens to people like you, and this is the type of things you might look to solve it, to fix it. And he might have a product for that particular, problem. So once he has enough data, he has enough confidence, okay, a lot of people want this. You can see kind of 80-20, which buckets people fall into. You can't build like 100 products for every single person because some people are just completely unique and you can't really monetize that. But by surveying your funnel, you might see, 80%, 20% of your list is buying 80% of your products, and they have this particular problem. So you find that there's 3 to 5 general buckets, he says. If you group your list into those 3 to 5 buckets, you can customize your product slightly for those buckets. You'll get massive increase in conversion. And it's worth it when you're using paid traffic because you've got to get as much conversion as possible. So, if you go to his landing pages and Google Ryan Levesque, you can kind of see how he integrates some of this in his own landing pages, his own funnels. It's quite interesting. He says, a lot of people sign up to his stuff just to go through his his surveys and his funnels to see how he's doing stuff. So I'll probably check that out soon. Yeah, the clever stuff that he does with a micro commitment survey. This is one of the type of surveys that he does to people on his list. Is basically he says, you grease the wheel with an easy question to start with. So, for example, are you a man or woman? What's your age? Things like that. You don't ask for people's name and email at the beginning because it's too much friction. So you'll basically get them to go through the whole thing. And at the end, you'll ask for their name and email. And because they've gone through and spent that time to do everything, at that point they're willing to give the information. So you've got to be careful what you ask for and what order to maximize the response rate and how many people complete the survey. So these personalization questions, it really allows you to hyper target and segment. I think okay, so a couple of examples here. He says, which of the following best describes your primary business? And so this is one of the questions that he asks his target audience, and that allows him to kind of learn to eliminate and consolidate categories. So I think he used to have a separate category for copywriters, and then he decided that there's not that many copywriters, and these guys consider themselves consultants. So he put them in the consultant bucket, and now he kind of markets to that group slightly separately than to a business owner, a physical business owner, or someone who's just thinking about starting a business. So the fewer options you have, obviously, the easier it is to create products for. And 3 to 5 buckets, he says, is kind of the sweet spot. You should start there, and you should see see how it goes. If you need to change, then you can always change it, but don't overcomplicate it, because if you overcomplicate it, you'll never do anything or you never start. So learn to eliminate, consolidate categories, and make the options, the fewer options there are in the survey, the easier it is for them to complete. So if you give people a big long list, sometimes they'll get stuck and they won't fill it in, and then they'll get distracted. So you need to really you need to spoon feed them. So make it very, very short questions. Multiple choice, make it very, very easy to drop down. They can just pick, click, and they give you a ton of information, but it doesn't take them a lot of time to do. And one interesting thing I didn't know, and I do a little bit of lead generation with survey forms and things. One thing he talks about is randomizing the order. It's really important, if you have a drop-down box, because he says that there's always a bias with the first and the last options, that people tend to spend more time just looking at the first and last options. So if you're not randomizing the order, you're going to get a skew towards those two, and that's not really going to be a true. That's not really going to be a true response because of that bias of having first and last attention bias. So I think his software does that. It randomizes the order that things appear, and when you click a drop down, it'll be a different order for every person. So that true randomization gives a truer response of your audience. So that's quite clever. I guess it's quite advanced. I didn't think about that. He has what's called like an other category. So you'll have what he thinks are his 3 to 5 buckets, and have another one. And if he's seeing a lot of common answers, maybe over 10-20% of people are filling in other and writing in another category that's quite popular, he'll make that a bucket. And that's a way for him to identify additional buckets that he can kind of sell to and target to separately to get a higher conversion. So he's got this conditional logic he talks about, where you kind of customize the subsequent questions in your survey. So for example, the example he gives, because this increases relevancy and conversion, so the example he gives, if your question is something like, which body part are you looking to improve? For men, it's going to be a different list. For women, it's going to be a different list. And so you need to, first of all, capture, are you a man or woman? And then the options that appear for the next question is going to be completely different. For men, it might be their arms, whatever. For women, it might be their tummy or, another body part. So that's how you can hyper segment, hyper target your list. He talks about using very colloquial conversational language, not trying to sound too robotic or formal, because, again, just trying to you're trying to blend into the conversation happening in their head, and so you have to be talking at their level. So one example, he says, you're having trouble getting decent traffic. It's a very kind of informal way of asking people about their problem. He doesn't say, what's the conversion like on your funnel, or what's the, he uses very, very normal language. So that definitely helps with relevancy, and then kind of people reading it easily and smoothly, and I guess increasing conversion. So let's see, there's a couple other good tactics here. Right, so after the survey, they go to a landing page where he offers value, but he still leaves them wanting more. So the answer might be, based on what you told me about your business, the number one marketing bottleneck is this, and I kind of touched on that. So he says there's 3 objectives to really doing these kind of funnels. The first one is to demonstrate you understand their pain, because that helps you build credibility. You know exactly what they're talking about. A lot of times he'll say that he'll get responses from his audience saying, it feels like he just read my mind, and he's like, that's because I'm doing this kind of research, and it's not by accident, you know. So if you're able to get that kind of response from your audience, it shows you understand what they're talking about, and you can obviously sell to them a lot better. But you know, he doesn't say, help me fill in this survey so I can work out what to sell you. He's saying, I'm going to help you fix this problem, what your marketing bottleneck is, and that's the incentive for them, is the value for them he's offering. So the first objective is demonstrate you understand their pain. The next one is demonstrate the urgency and severity of their problem. So this is kind of like problem, agitation, solution, the classic, you know, sales sequence. You identify what the problem is, you kind of agitate it, so you really make it very clear and very urgent. If there's no urgency and severity, then it's not big enough to deal with right now, and they can just put it off for another day, and they won't fill in the information, they won't carry on, you know, with the next action in your funnel. So that's the second objective: demonstrate the urgency and severity. And then, before you even talk about that solution, you know, problem, agitation, solution, before you get to the solution part, he says you've got to demonstrate that you care. And again, that's kind of making it very personal. You know, like a one-to-one sales conversation they might have. It's not even a sales pitch. It's like a one-to-one conversation you might have where someone's saying, hey, look, I was in your situation. I know exactly how you're feeling. This is why I developed this product. It does this, this, this. This is what it helped do for me. I think based on what you told me in this survey, this is also going to help you, and this is why, da-da-da-da. And just that demonstrating that you care, so that you want to see them succeed. That's really what's going to convince them that what you're offering is not just to make money, it's not just to pitch them on something that's going to make you rich, but actually something you developed because you understand exactly what they're going through. And that's what people need to feel before they have the trust to buy. I mean, you think about the amount of online marketing products being pushed out there is massive. And people don't know you. They're getting pitched all the time. There's like so much noise in the market. Why are they going to buy from you when there's 100 other people out there? So this is the thing that gives the edge. When you can understand your prospect better than anyone else and you segment them to give them exactly what they want, that's where the sales come, and that's why this guy's had some success. So it is really smart. And then the last stage was, you know, solution. So he kind of presents his option in context of all the other options that it might be out there, like what his competitors are doing, or, you know, other things that his prospects could do, and, you know, even maybe doing it yourself for the person trying to fix it themselves. But then he'll obviously position his one and kind of explain why that's the best and what he's doing that's different. So what he does with testimonials, this is all about video sales letters, because he says video sales letters generally increase conversions. I found the same thing. I try and always do VSLs on a landing page if I can. It's just more engaging. But he says that he's tested this with testimonials. It's interesting. If you read out the testimonials verbatim, like just word for word, you read through the testimonial on a video, he says you'll start to lose engagement. People drop off, they get bored. They're not really that interested to hear the whole thing word for word. So what he might do is kind of tie in the benefits to a testimonial, and he'll phrase it like this, you know, say, if you're wondering what kind of program, what kind of results this program delivers, here's what Mary says. And then he'll kind of read one or two things that basically summarize the benefit. And that's kind of, you know, that context of social proof, using a testimonial to demonstrate the benefits. So that's what keeps people hooked and interested, and it's kind of giving that social proof, that credibility that other people have gone through this exact program, and they had the same problems as you're watching this video, and so therefore this must be a good product for you. He talks a little bit about upsells. Obviously, when people just buy something from you, they've gone to that trouble, you know, to pull out their wallet, get their credit card out, punch it in on the computer. And that's when they're hot. Like, that's when is the best time to offer them another product that can do more for them. I mean, upsells is kind of controversial for some people because, you know, you feel like you're buying one product and then all of a sudden someone's pitching on something else. And you're like, I thought this original product I just bought is going to do for me what I need. So that, you know, you got to be kind of ethical with this, and you got to be not deliberately misleading people to make them believe they're buying something and then tell them on the next page, oh no, actually this is not going to work. You need to buy X, Y, Z. Because that can be very frustrating, and a lot of marketers do that very unethically. So, I mean, I don't like that. It's happened to me a lot, especially when I was learning, you know, about how to market online. I was taking tons of courses, spending tons of money, and 90% of them are rubbish. So, upsells, you know, if you do it the right way, you do it ethically, doing it in that buying window when they've just purchased something, that's the best time to grab them. You basically offer them something maybe like a done-for-you service where, you know, they can take all the information to themselves, or there's this software or this, you know, service that does it for them, and it's much quicker, it saves them time, et cetera, et cetera. And what's interesting as well, because most people do an upsell, that's very normal in sales funnels, but if they don't go for the upsell, he has what's called a downsell. and that's kind of where you're giving an almost as good option as the upsell. For example, you might say you can get 80% of the results for 20% of the price, and you just give them something slightly different. So you're not discounting your upsell. You're just giving them maybe enough to get enough value out of. Maybe they can't afford the full upsell, but they can afford something less. So you kind of offer a downsell if they decline the upsell. I thought that's quite clever. I haven't seen many people doing that, or at least phrasing it in that way. You'll get 80% of the results for 20% of the cost, which kind of will make them feel like they're getting a better deal maybe. So, and then he talks about how in his sales funnels, the 25 to 75% of the sales come through the follow-ups in his emails, and this is huge because I don't really do a lot of online info products, and so I haven't really spent a lot of time with email marketing and autoresponders. But this kind of statistic, it just makes you realize if you have a sales funnel, you're selling stuff online, you need to have a solid email follow-up, and then obviously he segments into what the buyer sequence is. So if someone buys this product, they get a certain emails follow-up sequence. If someone's not a buyer, they get a different sequence, and he kind of touches on what to put in those sequences. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's a lot to cover. One thing I did like was his idea for subject lines in emails is that he uses open loops. And so the trick with subject lines is you're obviously trying to grab people's attention, get them to open the email, because if they don't even open the email, they're not going to read your pitch, or they're not going to see anything and do anything. So the 80-20 of email marketing is your subject line. If you don't have a good subject line, the rest is wasted. And so he uses open loops where he might say something like, even a kid could do ... And he doesn't finish the sentence, but that open loop in people's minds, people are always trying to finish something, complete something, and so it kind of bugs them that they can't, and so they click on the email just to open it and find out what was he saying, what's the end of the sentence. And then obviously once they open the email, they can read the rest, and they can read your pitch. I think he has about 8 follow-up touches, and this is kind of interesting because I've read that you need 7, 8, 9 touches with a prospect to make a sale. If you're doing outbound marketing and prospecting, a lot of times you'll hear that. And these email touches is always offering something slightly different. Like one might be an FAQ to address kind of doubts and confusions that they had that maybe stop them from buying. And one might be a reminder email, this is the last day this thing is available, this thing is ending now. Emails offering value and things like that. And a really powerful one that he says is make them imagine how they will feel after the purchase. So, I've read that one in a few different marketing books, but that's powerful because people need to imagine the end state of how they're going to feel, what's the emotion they're going to feel after they purchase your product. If you can't move them to that state, there's not a powerful enough, momentum for them to make a purchase. So if you can really make that visualization clear and powerful, you'll be able to sell a lot higher and a lot more of whatever you're selling. If you can get them into that state of mind where they really already imagine having bought it and feeling better, whatever pain they were having, is solving that pain. And then he has, feedback touches after the purchase, kind of asking, how can I tweak, how can I improve my offer? Also making sure people are using the product properly, getting the most value from the product. And he might do upsells and cross-sells to other products to say, hey, people that bought this also found this really useful to get good results, and he might pitch them on something else. So he's just got a whole massive email marketing, survey, funnel survey, with surveys in there. So it's the email marketing touch points with some surveys in there. One thing he does with people that haven't bought anything is he kind of says, do you hate me survey. So he'll say, hey, in the subject line might be, do you hate me? And then he'll kind of say, hey, you haven't purchased anything, just want to understand why you didn't buy. What wasn't addressed, in the landing page, in my video, in the emails. What didn't you like or what didn't you see? And he'll get a ton of responses because that makes people feel like they need to reply like, oh, I don't hate you, I just didn't buy it because of this X, Y, Z. And he can kind of collect those responses, again, using a survey. And then what he'll do is he'll schedule a follow-up webinar and he'll kind of address those common objections, and he'll invite the people that didn't buy, and he'll put that on his funnel. And so he automates it after that. I mean, it goes on and on and on. He's using funnels and feedback loops all the way through his sales funnel. It's really clever stuff. So I know I'm talking quite fast and there's a lot of information in this, but you just have to go through and you have to get the details, read the book. It's really worth the money. So he has that follow-up webinar, and then he has more follow-ups. He'll improve his whole funnel based on the feedback he gets. So new visitors will have those questions addressed because of the feedback he's gotten from his old visitors. So the whole thing's just really clever. And then he'll reopen the offer with a different landing page, with it kind of revised with all those things, and then he'll open it back up to previous people and say, hey, look, I listened to all your feedback, I thought about it, I changed the product, here's what it has now, or here's what it addresses that you didn't know before, and he'll launch that again, reopen that offer to people that didn't buy. And so again, he's just going back and back on that 90% that didn't buy the first time, and he's just relentlessly finding out what they like, what they don't like, why they didn't buy, what the challenges are, and just constantly tailoring and segmenting them into different buckets and finding out, okay, these guys want this, these guys want this, so he'll direct them in the right direction. But he just does it. I think he does it to another level than most people have done before. So really clever, really enjoyed this. I think, like I said, this is mostly based towards B2C. So either people on your list, already on your list, that are just sitting there. I've got a couple of lists I could try this out on for one of my partners. I'm going to try this on. I know you can also direct it to, if you have a landing page, you can drive cold traffic to it, and you can start the survey funnel from there. With again, just helping them to identify a pain, and that's the beginning. You just drive them through these survey funnels to get information from them, offer them value, and then work out what their pains are, so you can segment them into buckets and give them exactly what they want. And that's going to make you rich, right? When you can give everyone exactly what they want, then the buyers are happy, the sellers are happy. It's win-win. So he does say you should use this ethically. Obviously, there's a lot of ways you could use this, I guess, unethically, but there's no need to. When you can offer people what they want and they're getting value from it, then it's win-win. So yeah, a ton of value. And he talks about the buyer email sequence, but I'll let you read the book to get into that one. This is a long video already. So yeah, you can see I enjoyed this book, and definitely, if you have any questions, I'd love to help people with this as well. You just follow my blog and ask me any questions you have with this type of project. This is what I really love doing, copywriting, helping people find out what the challenges are. And so I'm going to be trying out the software, and I'm definitely going to do a follow-up video once I've tested out this method with a couple of projects. I was actually thinking to use it with B2B, with outbound prospecting, because it's the same concept. With B2B, you're sending out email outreaches, and basically like a sequence of emails saying, hey, normally people are saying, hey, you want to buy this, and they just hassle you. But if you are offering them some value, and you get them hooked that way and get them into your funnel that way through emails, through the email outreach, I think this could be very powerful for B2B as well. And so that's what I'll be testing it on. And so it's kind of a hybrid, but I'm very curious. I'm very keen to try this out. So yeah, so this wraps up this book review, and I'll be back again with another one.